Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this episode, Lunchtime Think Business Live. Looking forward to talking with Matt Rizzetta, chairman of North 6 Group, who's been on the show multiple times, and the CEO of N6A, Daniela Mancinelli. All right. I'm impressed with myself that I pronounced everybody's name right. And so this is the sign of a successful show. I'm looking at you. So I love that you guys are here to talk about one of my favorite topics that I think doesn't get talked about a lot. And we're going to talk about, N6A. Daniela is a PR marketing and branding machine. You guys have just an amazing reputation, and we'll get into that. That's my dog barking. I forgot to shut the door. So after I ask you a question, I'm going to go shut my door. And then we got North 6 Group, where you're the chairman, Matt, and that's a family-run office with passion and purpose. And what's the other P?
Progress.
That's what I thought. I couldn't read my handwriting. It's the main focus of everything. But I want to start off by talking about, because Matt, 11 years ago, you started N6A. And I think one of the most important things that a lot of people don't think about enough is succession planning. And not only succession planning, but also really passing the torch and letting go. And through us talking and just knowing you and the way that you kind of announced all of this when the transition happened, I thought was just it just kind of oozed that was kind of happening behind the scenes. It seemed so seamless. And so I just want to talk about all the businesses out there that aren't thinking this way. How should they be thinking and copy the way you did it?
Yeah, well, thanks for having us, John. It's great too. And this, for me, particularly, is an extra special interview because I have somebody in Daniela who, I believe in and I care about. And it's been great to see her succeed.
Thanks,
And by the way, John, my dog, I'm just counting down the seconds before my dog starts barking. So get ready for that one next.
Right.
But look, I think the first thing, so you hit on a couple of things. The first thing is, there's a reason success is in succession, right? So you want to think about succession planning in a in a winning manner. And I think the way to do that is, first off, it all comes down to the people. You can't put a succession plan in overnight. I mean, it takes a long time. You have to make mistakes most of the time along the way. And I think the most important thing is you have to be able to identify people who are keepers and people who you can see 1, 2, 3 steps ahead of where their current role is. And, we hired Daniela in, when was it, 2015?
Yes, in May.
And it was tough because I hired Daniela, and it's funny. It's actually a chapter in my book. I hired Daniela as a vice president.
I'm loving your book, by the way. I'm halfway done with it. I'm loving it.
I don't believe that. Do you think he's really halfway done with it, D?
100% think he is.
100%. Well, hold on. I'm not that I ever feel like I have to defend myself, but I'm doing 75 hard right now. Andy Frisella's program. I'm on day like 43. And you have to read 10 pages a day. Like, it's part of the program.
Wow. I like that.
So your book is one of the books I read. I
like it.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I'm just messing with you, John.
I know. But I wanted to give you a little extra plug to,
Thanks,
to the book, 10 pages a day. And
you're like family at this point. Well, when I hired Dee, it was 2015, and we hired her as a vice president. But the second I met Daniela, I knew she was not a vice president. I knew that she was a future CEO, a future leader. And, I think that's the most important thing in succession planning is you have to have the vision to really see 1, 2, or 3 steps ahead of the current role that the person's in. And then obviously, there needs to be a foundation of any successful relationship. It needs to be trust. It needs to be built on learning. It needs to be built on mutual respect. And thank God we've made some bets that haven't paid off for us. With Daniela, that was a bet that paid off in spades, and that's one I'm happy to say I was right about.
I love it. And what about you? I love that, because business is not only about finding great talent, right? Because you can't build a business without great talent, but you also can't build a business without great talent and great instincts. And so, I love that story. And so, Daniela, as you're coming in, 6 years ago, are you thinking to yourself, this is a great place, I'm going to be here long term. Matt, you're a great guy, and I'm going to be the CEO one day, as you evolve into where you want to go?
Yep, 100%, John. I mean, it was a look. I mean, I still remember my first interview. I remember kind of my non-official first day. It felt like a second home, a family. I sat with Matt in one of the back conference rooms on Canal Street, and we talked about obviously the business, the growth, and I felt like I had known him for years. He had touched on key items that were important to me: building a strong team, a strong culture, investing into each team member, really having a vision, a global vision, and leaving behind a legacy, which I thought was extremely important, and the reason why I wanted to call N6A my home.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And so let's talk about the transition, because I think sometimes, during succession planning, the rollout, letting people know, right, the person who founded the company is, moving to another role, entrusting somebody else, and then, and that is a very sensitive rollout, on a lot of levels. The excitement of everybody being excited, and then the pushback of everybody saying, wait, you were my friend yesterday, now you're the CEO. And then Daniela, for you, which I want to get to, is how you changed and morphed, because that's a big shift. But let's start with the rollout, right? What was the rollout like, and how did you do it in a sensitive manner?
You want me to take that one, Danielle?
Yeah, you go for it, Matt.
Well, first off, John, we looked at the environment. This is something Dee and I had talked about for a long time. But the first thing is we looked at the environment. I mean, and it was COVID. COVID had just hit us, so we wanted to make sure last year, 2020, and obviously 2021, to a certain extent as well, but certainly last year was very much about stability and consistency. So we made a decision to put a transition plan in place, but not to implement it during COVID. We just thought during COVID, the responsible, sort of prudent thing to do was just to keep everyone in their current roles. And, so that's what we did. But we started to put the plan in place, in June or July. And, just like anything else, you start with phase 1 and you want to get to phase 5, and you just have to connect the dots in between. And we had touch points along the way to make sure that, we slowly phased it in to the point where come January 1st, everybody was fully in their new role. We announced it to our staff, about, what was it, Danielle, about a month or two, I think, before we rolled it out. So the staff knew about it preemptively before it was public. And we also tried to bring everybody in on the vision. So I know we'll talk about North 6 Group and some of the vision for the holding company, but we wanted to do that. We're all kind of bringing this together under the same North 6 family. And I think that really helped with the transition a lot, because they saw everybody sort of graduate at the same time. I mean, we had managers become directors. We had directors become vice presidents. We had, chief of staffs become chief operating officers. We had our chief operating officer become a CEO, and you had your CEO go into this new role with the holding company. So I think that helped as well with the transition, because everybody was sort of invested in each other's success and sort of graduated together. And that went into the succession plan as well. I mean, the culture at N6A and at North 6 Group is about much more than just one person and one individual. So, it was important to us that everybody felt equally as rewarded and enthusiastic about what we were building.
Yeah, I love it. Now let's talk about the new role, right, Daniela? So you come in, you have this new role, right? Your colleagues, you're this, and everything is shifting and moving, and now you're the CEO, and it's just, I think human nature now, where relationships then change. Not so much for everybody else, but for you. So what is that? Talk to me about, and talk to the Think community a little bit about what you learned from a leadership standpoint, and just about yourself.
Yeah. So it was a natural transition, but also, one that I had to take a pause and just think about a little bit further. So, we sit down in a room every morning, let's call it at 8:45. And everyone in the room with myself is either Matt Rizzetta, who's the CEO, or this was, obviously in 2020, or my colleagues and other folks in the C-suite. At some point, I realized that I was not going to be just, another member. I was going to lead these meetings. I was going to be the CEO. And, I felt that I I had such a great and strong rapport with the other C-suites, and I felt like I could just naturally become a leader because Matt had done such a great job just training us to be one.
Yeah.
I've never really been a big fan of titles, John. I felt like I was always part of the team. We kind of roll up our sleeves and dive in when we have to, especially when you join kind of a new, startup agency, let's say 6 years ago. So now as the CEO, I'm fortunate enough to have Matt as the chairman, and I can still call him, but the buck kind of stops at me. So this is the transition where I'm still getting used to, I know that I have to make these decisions sometimes on my own, and I may get some of them right, I may get some of them wrong, but I'm fortunate enough to have had 6 years experience, and I kind of think to my head, what would Matt do? And what can I maybe do different, to inspire growth?
Yeah, I love that. And I'm a big fan. If you're not making some mistakes, then you're not working hard enough, right?
Absolutely.
It's like you gotta make, it's the only way, we can read all the greatest books, we can have all the greatest mentors, but it's the mistakes or the nuances, and finding, I always find, I remember when I was in a role, I was a broker, I sold commercial real estate, and then I ended up taking over the office as the manager. And I remember thinking, working, and the day I found my voice where the office became mine, right? Where it wasn't my predecessors, but it was my office. And I don't say that in a narcissistic or egotistical way, but I felt like I could really step into my leadership to influence and help everybody raise their game. And so, yeah, it sounds like you're there or continually on that path, which I think is great.
It's never really been about celebrating, me becoming a CEO.
Right.
We wanted to take the time to celebrate the other successes of the business. We had a lot of promotions. We had directors become VPs. So I actually naturally felt more excited for everyone else on the team.
Yeah.
But I'm honored to take this role. I know how important N6A is to me, and most importantly, to Matt.
Yeah.
So, it's something I think and work at every single day.
I love it. Studies show that I think at the end of 2020, I could be getting this off by 1 or 2%. I think 6 or 7% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women, and this year is projected to be 8% women. For someone who I have an 18-year-old son and a 14, soon to be 15-year-old daughter who is going to do great things, and I want her to have the same ease to get to the CEO seat as anybody else, and so I'm expecting those numbers to shift dramatically this decade. What advice would you give to other women who are on the path to grow or start off in the CEO seat?
My advice is, look, find your voice early on. Don't be afraid to be yourself. It's okay to have challenging conversations. The most important thing is, be reliable, trust your gut. As women, I think we have the ability to multitask. We have, obviously high IQ and high EQ. So lean into that EQ, especially if you're working with large teams and in the services business. I mean, this is a people industry. It's not a one size fits all. You have to be human. But yeah, that would be my advice.
I love it. Did you ever see the CNN? Remember that CNN a couple of years ago? There was this guy and his baby came in the room live, and he was like shooing the baby out of the room. Do you guys remember when that happened?
Yes.
It wasn't CNN. It was like BBC or something, I think. And so then they did a parody of it. If it was a mom, right? And did you see that one? And so the nanny's coming in, the dog. She's like baking dinner. She's feeding. She's multitasking while still doing the call. It's
right.
Yeah. So it's great. Well, I love it. Let's move over to a little talking about passion, purpose, and progress. Pre-COVID studies show that by the year 2030, 85% of the jobs that exist don't exist today. And so when I hear progress, I just want to kind of reverse engineer to passion and purpose, because to me, this next decade is going to be have a lot of progress, have a lot of innovation. And so at North Six Group, what are the nuance, the intuitive things you're looking for in those progressive companies, Matt?
Thanks, Sean. Yeah. Also, just to follow up real quick on what Daniela was saying earlier, I think look, it's difficult when it's a founder-owned. It's always difficult when it's a founder-owned business because there's a connection to the brand that nobody else has, right? It's a founder. So I realized, how blessed and fortunate I am to have, after I had built the company and 11 years, I was the only CEO we had. And it's a very difficult decision that requires a lot of discipline and a lot of self-reflection for a founder to look in the mirror and say, look, this company that I founded really requires, is better served with someone else's leadership. And the good news, the easy thing for me was that I had somebody in D who I felt was the perfect leader to take the company into the next era, into our next phase. I mean, I think, she has a different leadership approach and style than me, which I thought was much needed. I think, Daniela leads behind the scenes. She leads through diplomacy. She leads through empathy. She leads through sensitivity. And I think that nowadays those are super important traits. And, it was an easy decision in many respects for me to make, but I also am aware that it's rare. I mean, it's not easy to find somebody in a founder-owned company where you could look to your right and say, look, this is the next CEO. So I was very blessed to have that.
Yeah, you were. That has universal, guidance in it, because that doesn't happen often. So it's great. And then
as far as North Six Group, I was looking around at the world. I was 37 years old when we started, North Six Group. I just turned 38. And we had built N6A. It was a great company. We invested a lot of time, money, resources in building a heck of a management team, obviously with Daniela at the helm. And then I'm looking around at the world, and there was just so much pain and suffering and bad news out there in the world. And, I'm thinking to myself, we can really build something and touch a lot of businesses out there that are geared toward things that, and, at that stage in my career too, John, I don't want to get involved at this stage in my career in businesses unless I have passion about them. Number one,
absolutely.
It's not worth my time, anyone's time. And number two, I really feel like I can only contribute value to businesses that I'm invested in, that I feel passionately about, that I feel have some kind of purpose or progressiveness to them. So this was all what led us to North Six Group, and the thesis is basically pretty simple. It's that we're a family office holding company, and we invest in and operate in businesses that check one or many of the following or any of the following three boxes. It's a business we're passionate about. It's a business we feel there's a specific purpose behind, or it's a business that we feel is progressive. It's geared toward progress. And, right now, obviously N6A was the first holding in that company, which Daniela is doing a heck of a job running. We have studios, which is a full suite marketing and content house, which video, podcast productions, great team in it. We invested in, if you can see the soccer jersey behind me, we invested in an Italian professional football club, which is located right near the town where my grandparents immigrated from, which is a big part of, my story and the story of our company. So that obviously is something we're passionate about. And we're going to be announcing some other investments in the next couple of months, all sharing one common theme and vision, which is that they're businesses that we have passion, purpose, or progress for.
Yeah, I love it. Let's talk about alignment for a minute, right? Because let's talk about lineage and alignment, right? You're bringing in the lineage of your family. You're in alignment when you start the business. Daniela comes in. Can I call you D as well? D comes in.
You can call me D. Absolutely.
Daniela comes in. Daniela comes in, and everything seems to be. And this is one of the reasons I always love talking to you, Matt, too, because you're very in sync with your company, your messaging, your purpose, and there's a humility and a deep understanding of where you are and where you want to go. And so, to be in alignment with yourself, to then open the door for Daniela to come in as the CEO and now the two of you are in alignment. Daniela, you're in alignment. So this isn't easy work to get into alignment with, but I think it's easy when you're doing what your soul is meant to be doing. And so talk a little bit about what alignment means to you guys, because I see so many people as a business coach. I see so many people all the time out of alignment. They're in this like fluctuating adjustment, floating, and they just float, and they're always trying to adjust to find their place. And it's so hard to take action. But when you're in alignment, you can take action. And so just talk about the importance of alignment.
Well, I think, Daniela, I don't know if you want to weigh in too, but, I think from my perspective, John, that's not built overnight. I mean, that's built with a lot of sweat equity and a lot of time together. And, Daniela and I mean, we've had so many conversations, dinners, lunches, meetings through the year. Some, frankly, were, not easy conversations that we had to have together. But now, 6-7 years later, whatever it's been, we can finish each other's sentences. And but if you asked us that question back in 2015, 2016, I think the same common thread of mutual respect and admiration for each other, and I think that would have, remained constant all along the way. I mean, we felt like that, I think, about each other from day one. But, obviously, chemistry is, it takes time to build chemistry. It takes time, and also you learn from each other. I mean, I think some of the best ideas we've implemented as a company have come from, Daniela's contributions, where, I brought an idea to the table and she put her own sort of spin and tweak to it. And, that became, brilliant innovation. And I'm sure, Daniela would probably tell you some of the same things, where some of the things that she's implemented for our staff and for our team and programs have come from the ideas of others. So I think it all comes down to just making sure, look, you need to be patient. These things take time, but there should always be a common thread and fabric of mutual respect and admiration between any teams for it to work long term.
Yeah, I agree. Daniela, how about you?
No, I agree. Look, we've sat in many meetings. We've done a lot of great things, and like Matt said, some challenging things together over the course of six years, including the pandemic. And we've been in a way away from each other for the past, I guess it'll be 1 year in March, and it still feels like we're in that room at 8:45 every morning, on 50 Green Street. So we work really hard at that, and sometimes, we don't have the answers going into the call, and when we get, our minds together, we come out aligned, and we feel really good about, the next steps and where we need to be. But Matt and Matt's family and the team, I mean, it really just is a special place, and it's easy to create that chemistry, John.
Yeah, I love it. Succession planning, alignment, making decisions, passing the baton, Matt, what's been the most challenging thing for you through this process, or something that you learned about yourself?
Well, I'm not one to pat myself on the back, but
I'm not, but I asked you. Right.
It's been easier than I ever expected. I mean, John, you know how it is when you're a founder, you're so connected to the brand. And, for 11 years, I founded a company, brought it to life. I mean, N6A was literally like a living, breathing organism to me. And the ease with which, I think I've been able to transition to the new role, I wasn't expecting it to be as seamless as it has been. And that's not a credit to me. I think that really just speaks volumes to Daniela and to the rest of the team. I mean, like she said, we have a great team under us. I think people are also really excited about what we're building, with North Six Group. I think we were able to do it in a way where, North Six Group is the parent company for N6A now. So I'm obviously still very connected and invested in N6A, and we're all doing this under the same brand and the same umbrella with the same core values. And I think that's kind of helped with the transition more than anything. And then in terms of challenges, look, I think the challenge is probably just controlling the deal flow. I mean, we have so much opportunity now through North Six Group to, make investments and operate new businesses. We're, in all sorts of interesting opportunity growth categories right now, with esports and electric vehicles and healthcare and education. And there's so many interesting opportunities. but we can only afford to make, a few bets. We can't bet on them all. So I think the biggest challenge for me has just been kind of putting together a process of, diligence and checks and balances to make sure that we're making the right bets and handling the deal flow.
I love it. I love
That's my dog in the back. I don't know if you can hear it.
I love it. Yeah, my dog will probably hear it soon and start barking. So, Daniela, let's my dog just started barking. Before we get into a round, tell everybody N6A's ideal client.
And N6A's ideal client is somebody who, wants to win, is hungry for growth, is not afraid of doing something outside of the box, and enjoys, speaking with us on a daily basis because, we're constantly involved with their team. So that's kind of our ideal client.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, you guys do great work. All right, you ready for a quick speed round?
Sure.
All right. One thing, finish the sentence. What is one thing every person needs to raise their awareness when it comes to PR, marketing, and branding? Daniela, we'll start with you. Say?
Yep. As far as PR, marketing, and branding,
one thing they need to do to raise their awareness.
They need to get social. They need to tighten up the messaging. Get out there. Mm-hmm.
I love it. Matt?
Yeah, we talked about this. I think when it comes to PR, be classy, be smart, and be fast. I think if you do those three things, they're going to win in PR nowadays.
I love it. All right. Favorite book and why? Most favorite recent book? Yeah.
Matt, you go first.
I just read Bob Iger's autobiography, Ride of a Lifetime. I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah, I'm reading it.
I was going to steal that one. Matt's books. Just all of Matt's books, John.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually taking his class in master's class right now too.
Oh, yep.
I'm listening to his book. When I'm not reading yours, I'm listening to his.
Yeah.
Good save.
Last question. Best piece of advice you've ever received, Daniela?
For me personally, just being more so on the empathetic side, is develop a thick skin.
All right, Matt.
The best piece of advice I ever received: stay true to yourself. I think the more authentic and genuine you are in business and life, I think you're gonna win. I think the most mistakes I've ever made in my career have been when I've sort of veered away from staying true to myself and my roots and my DNA.
Yeah, I love it. I can't thank you both enough for talking with me today and the Think community. Daniela, congratulations on all of your success and your new role as CEO, especially during the pandemic, which was, it's amazing. I was doing a keynote in Nashville a year ago, March 1st. When we left on March 3rd, they were shutting down their international and domestic travel. And then everyone was talking about Corona. What does this mean to all of us? And now here we are a year later. So always enjoy talking to Matt and now you. So thanks so much for both of you talking about the importance of succession planning, being in alignment, being true to yourself, bringing in family lineage, listening to your gut, having great talents, and building a business that has longevity and legacy. I will ask one last question as we come to a close. And Daniela, I'm going to ask you first, and then I'll ask Matt. But first, let me just say this: n6a.com is the way you get to N6A, and north6group.com for North 6 Group. Daniela, as you fast forward 100 years, what do you want your legacy to be?
I just want to make a difference, help people, be a part of positive change. It's pretty broad, but that's what's in my heart. Yeah.
And Matt, how about you?
I just want to be the founder who hired the right CEO to transition to the next phase. That's all I want to do.
That's good. That's good.
Something, right?
I love it. I love it. Daniela, thank you so much. Matt, always a pleasure talking to you. Always filled with such great content. Kudos to you for the growth and putting things in place for the evolution of your business. Think community, if N6A or North 6 Group can be of any service to you, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you all for listening for this interview, to anybody who could use it. And Daniela and Matt, thanks again. It was great.
John, I got to get you a soccer jersey from our team, SS Kabbalah. What's your favorite number?
2.
You know, D. Everyone says 2, 3, and 9. Those are the big ones, right?
Matt 6. I'm
got 6 behind me.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, I appreciate it, guys. I appreciate
Thanks,
you both.
John.
All right.
All right,
Stay on
good
for
having
just a second. All right.